The cold iron fetters bit deep into my chafed wrists, the dungeon's chills seeping through the metal and spreading agonizingly along my veins. I kept my eyes lowered, fixed on the cracked stone floor beneath my feet. I am Alara Grace. For 10 years. I have survived on a single lie. Infertile. Frail. A worthless omega, unworthy of wolf-kin bonds. Unworthy of noble betrothals. Incapable of bearing an alpha's offspring. This was my only armor. My sole protection against being reduced to a bargaining chip for my family's schemes. The heavy oak doors of the auction house groaned open, and a wave of aristocratic decadence and arrogant laughter washed over me. I stumbled into the torchlit hall, where hushed whispers instantly transformed into greedy, lecherous stares. This was the final humiliation my uncle Lucius had reserved for me. For 10 years, he had kept me imprisoned in the family's desolate tower, systematically ruining my reputation, crushing every shred of spirit and vitality within me. And now he was determined to sell this broken and useless orphan of the Grace family to the highest bidding wolf noble, the last unclaimed omega of the Grace family. The auctioneer's shrill, cold voice echoed through the hall, declared naturally infertile by the clan's physicians, frail in constitution, without hereditary title or tribal backing, docile and compliant, untethered and unencumbered, an ideal, trouble-free spouse for any lord. Docile, broken, worthless. These stains clung to me like filth, and I bore them without resistance. 10 years I had spent meticulously crafting this numb, cowering facade, hunched shoulders, hollow eyes, trembling hands, convincing all that I was born base and insignificant. No one would fight for me, no one would waste their influence on me, and no one would ever care to look beneath my disguise. A rough, drunken voice cut through the murmurs from the front row. I'll take her. A barren omega is the most convenient, no pups to raise, no alliances to maintain. 50 silver coins. I recognized him, Lord Voss, a brutal lesser alpha, notorious for mistreating his servants and discarding his partners once novelty faded. My throat tightened, my heart slamming against my ribs. This was far worse than a political marriage. This was a slow execution. In his hands, I would be imprisoned, broken, and my life's secret would die with me, buried forever. Another cold bid sliced through the noise. 70 silver coins. Panic flooded my veins. Each increase in price hammered another nail into my coffin. I dropped my head lower, biting my trembling jaw, molding myself into an even more pathetic sight. As long as the world saw me as worthless, no one would pry, no one would dig. I had never been an infertile, frail omega. I was the last ancient pureblood omega in these lands, the only one capable of counterbalancing the Wolf King's unbridled, absolute power. Yet this coveted, ultimate gift was, to me, a death sentence. Anyone who discovered my secret would stop at nothing to destroy me. And anyone bound to me along with me. The auctioneer raised his gavel, poised to seal my grim fate. 70 silver coins. Going once. A low, fearsome growl sliced through the hall, silencing every sound. It wasn't a roar of rage, but it carried an undeniable, absolute dominance that crushed every whisper of arrogance and greed. Sweeping across the entire auction house, the torches on the walls flickered violently, their flames bending slightly, like subjects bowing to their sovereign. Total silence descended as every head turned toward the entrance. When I looked up, my breath stopped. He stood at the threshold, a black velvet robe embroidered with dark gold wolf motifs draped over his broad frame. His posture commanding and immovable, exuding the primal authority of a supreme alpha. Kalan Viscerin, the High Wolf King, sovereign ruler over every wolf in the realm. His power was vast, nearly uncontrollable, without equal. The assembled nobles froze, none daring to speak, none daring to move, their eyes reflecting genuine fear and awe, even among the most seasoned elders. His ice-blue gaze swept coldly across the crowd, deeming all beneath his notice, until it locked onto me, onto my shackled wrists, my bare, trembling feet, my hunched, broken form upon the stage. The bond of fate stirred at that moment. A searing, sharp pull exploded deep within my soul, a sacred thread, invisible to all else, suddenly tautened, yanking me toward him, its ancient power searing my very being. My wolf spirit, dormant and suppressed for 10 years, stirred beneath my skin, a low, desperate whimper echoing from my heart. Mate. It was not a thought. It was instinct carved into wolf bone, a law above all other laws. I saw the king's jaw tighten, his broad shoulders stiffening, his nostrils flared, catching the truth buried beneath my layers of pretense, the unique, pristine bloodline hidden behind the mask of frailty, infertility, and worthlessness. The auction ends now. His voice, deep and resonant, carried an unyielding royal command. No one dared object. The auctioneer's gavel hung suspended, his face ashen, his body frozen. Even in his fear, Lord Voss braved a trembling protest. Your Majesty, this is a legal transaction. This woman is the property of the Grace family. She belongs to no one. Kaelin's gaze never left me, his tone ice cold. No one bids. No one touches. From this moment, she is mine. Silence became absolute. Every eye in the hall darted between the High Wolf King and Meth despised, discarded girl. My heart thundered in my chest, terror overriding all numbness and confusion. He felt it. He felt the bond between us. The most powerful Alpha King in all the land was bound by destiny to Meth cast-off, slandered, worthless woman. I knew, in that instant, that my 10-year lie had finally been uncovered, not by my family, not by nobles, but by the most powerful man in the realm, the one who, with the truth, could easily annihilate me. He strode toward the stage, each step steady and authoritative, his overwhelming alpha presence blanketing the hall, pinning me in place. I had spent a decade hiding, fleeing, evading captivity and exploitation, only to have my entire future claimed by the most supreme being in existence. When the fetters fell from my wrists, the cold metal scraping my raw skin sent a sharp sting through me. I instinctively curled my hands into my sleeves. The silence in the hall remained unbroken. Every gaze bore into Meshach, envy, speculation, all like tiny blades grazing my skin. My uncle Lucius hurried through the crowd to the stage, his face plastered with a sycophantic smile as he bowed low before the king. Your Majesty, this is a lapse on my part. A failure to anticipate your presence at such a lowly transaction. To disturb your sacred person is truly unforgivable. His words, layered with veiled reproach, were meant to remind all present that I was still Grace family property, that the king's action was an overreach, a seizure of private aristocratic assets. Kaelin stopped at the foot of the stage, his ice-blue eyes never flickering toward Lucius, fixed solely on me. His low, steady voice cut through the faint gasps around them. Clan disposal of kin must obey the wolf-kin law of fate. Your auction violates the iron law of the chosen bond. Lucius stiffened slightly but refused to back down. This woman has been confirmed infertile for 10 years. A worthless omega with no breeding value. How could she possibly share a destiny bond with your Majesty? The clan physician's diagnostics are all on record. This is no fabrication of mine. I kept my head down, my nails digging into the fabric of my palms, panic blooming in my chest. My uncle was deliberately invoking the 10-year lie of infertility to undermine the king's judgment, to remind everyone of my worthlessness, hoping Kaelin would abandon me. If the king wavered for even a moment, I would be sold off once again. Her value is for me to judge, not you. Kaelin stepped onto the stage, his towering figure eclipsing me, his cold, crisp pinioned wolf scent enveloping me, shutting out every other noble's scent in the hall. In 3 days, the royal herald will arrive at the Grace estate with a marriage contract. From that day, she moves into the palace. The Grace family will have no further say in her affairs. Lucius's face darkened, his tone turning resentful. Your Majesty, a hasty marriage is not in accordance with royal etiquette. The Council of Elders will surely object. They have long approved Lady Seraphina of the Walker family as your political match. Her family's forces would stabilize the border unrest. My heart sank. Seraphina, the high-ranking Omega who adored the king, was known across the capital for her prestigious lineage and pure bloodlines. To all, she was the perfect partner for the Alpha King. And I, a destitute orphan bearing the stigma of infertility, was nothing but dust at her feet. Kalen's jaw tightened, his alpha pressure intensifying. Many lesser wolves in the hall involuntarily bent their knees, unable to resist the instinct to submit. The council's opinions are my concern. The marriage is set. No one changes it. He signaled to 2 royal guards, who flanked me protectively. I offered no resistance, following them in a daze, past my uncle, where his lowered voice hissed. Just for me. Don't think the king can save you from me. The day your secret comes out will be the day you die. The words lodged like shards of ice in my heart. I dared not look back, dared not betray a flicker of alarm. Letting the guards guide me out of the torchlit hall and into the royal carriage. Inside, thick furs lined the walls, muffling the outside world. Kalen sat across from me, his broad frame dominating the space, watching me in silence. I kept myself pressed into the far corner, avoiding his gaze, terrified he might see through the years of cowardice to the truth of the ancient Omega beneath. You've been suppressing your presence, he said suddenly, his voice flat, unreadable. I froze, clutching my skirt, forcing out a trembling, feeble voice to match the persona I'd built. My constitution is weak, my blood thin, my presence faint. It is not intentional. Faint. He leaned forward, closing the distance, his overwhelming alpha presence washing over me. I could hear the steady rhythm of his heart beneath my own panicked pulse. The moment I entered the hall, I caught a trace of something, a crisp, pure scent, the mark of ancient blood. Buried beneath your carefully crafted pallor. Terror flooded my veins. I bit my lips so hard I nearly drew blood, forcing myself to remain vacant, hollow. Your Majesty must have been mistaken. The clan physicians all say my blood is withered. Too weak even for basic Omega instincts. Ancient bloodlines. Impossible. He regarded me for a long, silent moment, then slowly leaned back, his gaze still sharp, filled with something I couldn't read. 3 days, and you'll be my contract-bound partner in the palace. There. You need not act for anyone. I found it absurd. A contract. A cold union built on stolen power. Not love, only the pull of a fated wolf's bond. He claimed to offer me breathing room, but in truth, he was locking me in a gilded cage, where my secret could be exposed at any moment. The carriage rolled through the capital's gates, the stone spires of the palace emerging in twilight. I stared out the window at the endless royal towers, my heart cold. I had escaped my family's auction, only to walk into another, more inescapable prison. Worse yet, the Alpha King, who had glimpsed my deception, sat directly across from me. Before I could even think of a way to guard my secret, Kalen pushed open the carriage door and lifted his hand as if to touch my wrist. I flinched back instinctively, dodging his reach. He paused, his gaze flickering toward my evasion. For a moment, something dark passed through his eyes. I couldn't tell if it was displeasure or something else. When the palace maid Lyra handed me a coarse linen sleeping gown, her fingers dug deliberately into my forearm, sharp pain shooting into my bones. I didn't pull away, remaining the docile, broken thing they expected. Lady Seraphina, daughter of the elders, has instructed that this is the most remote courtyard in the palace. Lyra sneered, her voice pitched low, dripping with contempt. Just right for a baron. Childless woman like you. His Majesty is only acting on instinct. Once the novelty fades, the council will force him to annul the contract and wed Lady Seraphina, the proper queen. My fingers tightened on the cloth. I understood clearly. The palace was awash with rumors. Everyone thought I didn't deserve the Alpha King. Everyone waited for me to be cast aside. Lyra had been bribed by Elder Morgan to torment me, spread gossip, and push me to renounce the marriage myself. A storm broke that night. Wind battered the window panes, and rain poured into the courtyard storage shed, ruining the palace's winter herbs. The guard on duty promptly blamed me. She was the only one in the yard just now. She must have knocked the tarps loose. Destroying royal provisions is a crime. he snarled, reaching to drag me to the elders' court for judgment. Lyra watched from the covered walkway, stoking the flames. I told you she was treacherous. Knowing she can't win the king's true heart, she takes vengeance on palace property. The very idea of such a woman as a consort. Other servants chimed in, their accusations walling me in. A normal woman might have protested. But 10 years of hiding had taught me that defense only invites deeper scrutiny. Silently, I stooped to gather fallen dry cloths and walked through the rain toward the leaking shed. Cold water soaked my hair and dress, the chill seeping into my skin. Without a word, I gathered the scattered herbs, spread the tarps, wrung out the water. My fingers scratched bloody by rough herb stems. I would not defend myself. Defense only fueled suspicion. Quietly fixing the problem was my safest course. A steady, heavy footfall sounded behind me. Even the rain seemed to hush as the supreme alpha presence drew near. My heart clenched. I knew without turning who it was. He should have been in the main hall with the elders, not seeking out this remote little courtyard. The guard and Lyra dropped to their knees, not daring to breathe. Kalen ignored them, walking straight to the shed's entrance. His gaze fell on my hands cut, muddy, stained with herbs, with no evidence, only presumption. You condemn my bound partner, he said, his tone flat but laced with cold fury. The flagstones beside the shed bear scratches from the wind, clearly washed by rain. Nothing to do with her. Lyra shuddered, bowing her head. Your Majesty, I was merely repeating gossip. I never meant to slander the lady. Did Elder Morgan order you to torment her? Or was it Seraphina? Kalen asked, his voice still flat. Lyra went pale, unable to answer. I stood in the rain, saying nothing. I didn't plead or accuse. I simply spoke. Softly. The herbs are sorted. The damage is not severe. No one need be punished. I wasn't playing for sympathy. I genuinely did not wish to see anyone punished for my sake. I had long grown used to baseless accusations. A little more meant nothing to me. Kalen turned to me, his gaze losing its cold distance, replaced by something softer, something I couldn't name. He stepped closer, took a clean cloth, and gently began to wipe the mud and blood from my fingers. His motions careful, almost reverent. Why do you never defend yourself? He asked softly. Rain dripping from his dark hair onto the ground between them. Defense doesn't help. It only invites more speculation. I looked away, my heart racing. In my quiet forbearance, I had already broken the fragile mask of the broken, useless Omega, and he could see it. He paused, not forcing me to look up, but his voice was low. Before me, you need not bear everything in silence. Your goodness should not be a weapon for others to use against you. The mate bond pulled harder at that moment. His crisp wolf scent enveloped me, his warmth seeping into the cold places I had long walled off. I could feel Ithis cold. Calculating Alpha King was being moved by my silent resilience, by the gentle strength of my forbearance. His wall between cold contract and personal care was crumbling. I stepped back, breaking the contact, forcing down the fluttering in my chest. I could not let him care. If he truly loved me, when the truth of my blood came out, he would be torn between his throne and his fated mate. Kalen saw me retreat, and something like sorrow flickered across his face. But he did not press. He simply ordered Lyra confined, then stood at the edge of the rain, watching me. I bent over the herbs again, not daring to meet his eyes. My heart full of turmoil. I only wanted to hide and survive. I never expected that a silent act of kindness in a storm would plant something like love in the heart of the High King. I did not yet know that, in the Elder Hall, Morgan and Lucius had already used the herb incident to weave a fresh plot to drive me and the king apart, waiting for the right moment to push me into the abyss. The day after Lyra's confinement, rumors erupted into an inferno. As I walked the colonnade with a bowl in my hands, servants and lesser nobles stared at me with disdain, whispers stabbing my ears. The king is only enchanted by a momentary instinct. How could he keep a barren Omega? The elders have already petitioned to annul this temporary contract and wed Seraphina to solidify the tribal alliance. The Grace woman carries bad fortune. Keep her in the palace and she will poison the bloodlines of the entire realm. Each word was a needle piercing me. I was long used to contempt. But the thought that Kaelin would yield to the council's pressure filled me with a cold dread I could not suppress. Between us was only a forced bondone that would shatter before the weight of royal stability and political calculation. That afternoon, Elder Morgan and his council members entered the king's hall, sending a servant to summon me. As I stepped in, dozens of eyes fell on me. Morgan rose first, his ancient, forceful voice echoing, "Your Majesty, we are here to plead with you to break this marriage. 10 years of infertility are undeniable. She cannot provide an heir. The throne cannot be entrusted to her. The Walker family, Seraphina, pure in blood, strong in alliances, is the match that will pacify the border lords. This is what the clans together expect." The other elders echoed his words, listing my faults and Seraphina's merits, pressing Kaelin to choose. I stood to the side, twisting my skirt in my hands. Silent. I had no defense. The lie of infertility was my own creation. My protection now, it was my greatest liability, and I could not refute it. Kaelin sat high on the wolf-carved stone throne, his ice blue gaze sweeping the elders, his alpha pressure slowly spreading, quieting every breath in the hall. "My partner is chosen by fate, not by council decree," he said evenly, betraying no emotion. "The contract stands. It will not be broken lightly." Morgan would not yield. He stepped forward, his tone hardening. "Your Majesty cannot risk the entire wolf nation for personal whim. If you keep her, the chieftains will grow restless. Wars will again ravage the borders. You are the Alpha King of all these lands. You must put the clans first." I listened in silence, my heart growing cold. Kaelin's quiet, the elders' relentless pressure, the universal opposition. I was certain he would relent. The crown would always outweigh some fleeting bond of fate. I was only a burden he had taken on a whim, and when he had weighed the costs, he would cast me aside. After the elders left, only Kaelin and I remained in the hall. I stepped forward, my voice barely audible. "Your Majesty, if the council's pressure is too great, the contract can be annulled. I am willing to return to the Grace estate. To stop being a burden to you, to the crown." I forced myself to sound numb, hollow, pretending I didn't care about the bond that tied us. Kaelin's eyes snapped to me, something dark and unreadable churning in them, but he gave no comfort, only a cold response. "This is not for you to decide. Return to your quarters and wait." No reassurance, no explanation, only a distant command. The words sealed my suspicion. He was already weighing the costs, already planning to cast me aside for Seraphina. Who could strengthen his throne? An icy weight settled in my chest. I said nothing more, only bowed and left. Even the torchlight in the long corridors felt cold. Back in my little courtyard, I leaned against the cold stone wall, replaying the auction, the way he had swept me away. Compared to the cold distance in the hall, the gulf was nearly unbearable. I had thought fate would be my salvation. Instead, it was only another brief, fragile dream. I did not know that Kaelin's cold dismissal was a performance for Morgan's spies. That he was pretending to draw back to keep the rebels off guard as he gathered proof of Lucius and Morgan's treachery. None of that secret protection reached me. The courtyard gate creaked. A slender figure stepped through. Seraphina, her silver wolf pendant clinking, her eyes full of undisguised jealousy. She stopped in the center of my yard, her white wolf-embroidered gown an insult against my faded linen. She stepped closer, her cloying omega scent deliberately overpowering mine. "Do you truly think one fated bond can hold the king's contract?" Her voice dripped with scorn. "Every elder backs me. Every border chieftain supports my union with His Majesty. You are just a footnote the crown will erase." I kept my back to the cold wall, not meeting her eyes, clinging to my cowering posture. "I have never dreamed of being queen. If His Majesty chooses you, I will leave, without entanglement." My retreat only stoked her fire. She grabbed my sleeve, tugging hard enough to tear the fabric. "Pretty words are easy. If you truly mean it, then submit your annulment yourself. Spare yourself the public humiliation of being expelled." A guard's footfall sounded in the distance. Seraphina, unwilling to be seen harassing me, snorted, released me, and strode away. I watched her go. My heart heavy. Even the closest noblewomen to the king believed I would be abandoned. Perhaps Kaelan had already made his choice. That night, I could not sleep. Seeking calm, I went to the herb garden at the rear of the courtyard. As I passed the colonnade behind the elder hall, two low voices drifted through the carved stone. I stopped, pressing against the wall. One, hoarse and old, belonged to Morgan. The scheme to claim her baron was your idea, was it not? As long as she's branded baron, the king cannot openly defend her. We have our opening to seize the throne through this marriage. Then, Lucius's familiar, venomous voice. Exactly. 10 years ago, I sensed the ancient Omega blood in her, power enough to challenge any alpha. If she awakened, our plan would be ruined. So we spread the barren lie, made her worthless, suppressed her blood's awakening. She was to be our final trump. We'd have sold her, sacrificed her, to sever the king's fate bind. Morgan laughed. All calculation. When the king is forced to renounce her and wed Seraphina, we'll join with the chieftains to usurp the throne. When Alara is sacrificed, her ancient blood will dissipate, and all power in the realm will fall to us. Each word was a hammer blow. My blood went cold. My hands trembled uncontrollably. I had believed the lie of infertility was my own shield, my own choice. But it was all a trap set by my uncle and the traitor elders. The false diagnostics, my imprisonment, my slander, all designed not to protect me but to use me as a sacrifice. A tool to dethrone Kaelan. Lucius's voice again, sharp with malice. Once the ancient Omega blood fully awakens, the king's power will link with hers. We'll have no leverage. Our only hope is to keep her weak, suppress her, and wait for the perfect moment. The auction was supposed to be that moment. A lowly alpha would have broken her spirits further, and we'd have taken her, Morgan. But the king appeared and snatched her away. Now the bond only complicates matters. But his coldness toward her, the council's pressure, Seraphina's jealousy, soon the rift will be complete. I clapped my hand over my mouth, stifling the sob rising in my throat. All my suffering had not been accident. I had been a pawn in a decade-long plot. My shield was my enemy's chain. My hidden blood, their greatest fear and their greatest prize. I crept backward, pressing my spine to the cold stone, slipping away from the chamber of horrors. My mind churned 10 years of cheap food, of scornful eyes, of false diagnoses, of my uncle's false kindness. All of it a lie. I had thought the barren lie would keep me safe, but I had been walking toward the butcher's block all along. They didn't fear my death. They feared my awakening, my becoming Kaelan's irreplaceable mate. And yet, a deeper question gnawed at me. In the hall, Kaelan had refused to annul the contract despite the pressure, then turned around and treated me coldly. Could he truly not see the conspiracy between the council and Lucius? Or did he, too, believe my tainted reputation made me unworthy? I remembered the rain, the way he had gently cleaned my wounds, that brief, genuine warmth. It clashed so sharply with the coldness of the throne room. Did he care because of the instinctual bond? Or was there something more I could not read? Wind whipped dead leaves against the window. A wild thought came to Muhat. If Kaelan already knew of the conspiracy, and his coldness was a performance. But the thought died quickly, suffocated by the rumors, Seraphina's threats, and my own doubt. I had no proof. The only certainty was that the council, my own uncle, all wanted me to break with Kaelan. All wanted me as a sacrifice, a blade to sever his fate bond. I pressed my hand to my chest. My wolf spirit stirred, the faint scent of my ancient blood nearly escaping. If I fully awakened, the conspiracy would be laid bare, and Kaelan and I would both be thrown into a maelstrom. Before I could figure out how to test Kaelan's true heart, a steady footfall approached outside the gate, the unmistakable rhythm of a king. 3 soft knocks at the door, gentle, deliberate, bearing none of the overwhelming alpha pressure, but something almost uncertain. I rushed to wipe my damp eyes, forced my blank, frightened mask back into place, and unlatched the door. Kaelan stood in the darkness, in a simple linen tunic, having shed his formal robes. The night wind carried his cold pine scent into my room, wrapping around me. "You lingered long at the rear colonnade," he said, his gaze cutting straight through my pretense. "You heard Morgan and Lucius, didn't you?" My body went rigid, all my careful deception shattered. I thought I had been unseen, but he had known all along. Panic surged. I stepped back, hitting the wall, fingers clenching the wood behind me. "If you knew everything, why did you pretend to be cold?" My voice broke. Years of buried hurt spilling out. "Why did you let them torment me? Let Serafina threaten me? Let the rumors crush me if it was all just an act for the rebels? Did you not care that I was drowning in despair?" He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him, shutting out every prying eye. The mate bond surged, and his icy gaze softened, revealing weariness and tenderness he had hidden from the world. "If I had defended you openly, Morgan and Lucius would have accelerated your sacrifice." His voice was low, careful. "I have known of Lucius's schemes for 10 years. I have been gathering proof. Taking you at the auction was my only way to protect you. But the rebels are deep in the council. I couldn't act rashly." I stared, the second reversal hitting me like a wave. He hadn't been moved only by instinct. He had known of my plight long before we met. The cold words, the distance, all a performance to lull the conspirators. The night in the rain, when Lyra accused you, I knew she was Morgan's spy. He stepped closer, gentle, afraid to spook me. "If I had stayed by your side, they would have killed you outright." My coldness kept them complacent, convinced I would yield to the crown and let them expose themselves. I thought of all the loneliness, the slights, the desperate nights, all necessary sacrifices in his plan, but the agony of bearing them alone had been real. "You knew I was an ancient Omega, the very thing they wanted to sacrifice. Why take me? Why bind me?" My voice was barely a whisper. "My blood will counter your strength. To your crown, I am a liability." He lifted his hand, pausing an inch from my cheek, holding back, his eyes filled with a profound, unshakable devotion. "The wolf's fate cannot be denied. You are my mate, born for me. This bond is above the crown, above the clans." His words were solemn, steady. "Your ancient blood is not a threat, it is a force to protect this realm. Lucius and Morgan fear your power, so they lied for 10 years. I will protect your awakening. I will never let anyone harm you." He confessed that these past days had been a dual agony, feigning coldness while watching me suffer, and fighting his alpha instincts to claim and protect me, to soothe the bond's ache. His gentleness in the rain was not a passing whim, it was the truth of his heart, barely contained. The misunderstanding melted away. The warmth of our bond pushed back the cold. Looking at this king who had endured so much in silence, who had woven such elaborate protection for the first time in 10 years. A crack appeared in my wall, and something like love bloomed. But peace did not last. Urgent shouts broke the night. A guard's voice, raw with terror. "Your Majesty, the Elder Hall has mobilized. Lucius leads the Grace clan's private army. TV surrounded the main gate. They demand Lady Alara be given over for sacrifice, and that you renounce the contract and wed Serafina." The last shred of peace shattered. The air thickened with menace. Kaelin's eyes hardened instantly, the fierce killer's edge returning. But his alpha pressure was carefully contained away from me. This was the moment he had waited for. "Stay in this room. No matter what you hear, do not come out." His voice was steady, commanding, but underneath it a fierce protectiveness. "The palace wards will hold. No one will breach them to harm you. Wait for me." I grabbed his sleeve, my fingers trembling. I knew his strength, but this was the full rebellion. The council, the clan armies, Lucius's decades of scheming. The odds were terrifying. "They want me. My blood." My voice was calm, clear, no longer the cowering girl. "They won't really hurt you. Their goal is to take me for the sacrifice, to sever your fate bond." Kaelin looked down at my hand clutching his sleeve. His eyes softened, and he pressed his hand over mine. A brief, warm touch against the cold night. "They will not succeed. Trust me." He pulled back, stepped through the door, and shut it firmly, sealing away the chaos. The courtyard fell silent. But from afar came the clash of blades and howls of war. The palace was in full revolt. I pressed myself against the doorframe, forcing calm. I reviewed everything. Lucius and Morgan's 10-year lie. The suppressed blood. The auction. The uprising, all to overthrow the crown. They knew if my ancient Omega blood fully awakened and tied to Kaelin's, their insurrection would be hopeless. The silence in the yard was worse than the war cries. I knew the rebels had pinpointed my location. They would come for me last. When the battle was decided, then, the clash of arms suddenly faded. A familiar, oily laugh drifted from beyond the gate. "Dearest niece, long time no see." Lucius's voice, cold and mocking. The old door splintered under a heavy blow, and he stood in the ruins, dusty robes stained with blood, blade in hand, backed by armed Grace clan warriors. He strode toward me, his gaze hungry, as if I were already an offering. 10 years of waiting, and here we are. Did you truly think the king's false protection would save you? I straightened, casting off all pretense of weakness. My eyes were cold, watchful. You spent a decade fabricating lies, imprisoning me, defaming me to sacrifice my blood and usurp the throne. Are you so sure you won't fail? Fail? Lucius laughed, his face wild with ambition. The palace is surrounded. The king is overwhelmed. The council holds all the armies. The moment your ancient blood is sacrificed, Kaelin loses his mate. His power breaks. His mind crumbles and the throne is mine. He gestured to his soldiers, his voice venomous. Take her, now. The altar awaits. They lunged. In that moment, my dormant wolf spirit surged, shattering every shackle placed on it. A pure, sacred power erupted from my core, sweeping the courtyard in waves of ancient authority. The attacking soldiers froze, their wolf power suppressed, their knees buckling under an instinctive submission. Lucius's eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible. Your blood now. This was the third reversal. I had never been the weak, helpless Omega. Beneath my 10-year disguise was the ultimate ancient bloodline of the wolf kind. The one power that could quell all rebellion and balance the throne. I looked at my uncle's terror-filled face and finally understood. His greatest fear had never been Kaelin, but me fully awakened. The lie of barrenness. The years of confinement and humiliation, all designed to prevent this moment. And yet, his machinations had not foreseen that life or death peril was exactly the catalyst for my awakening. My blood pressure spread through the palace. The fighting outside went silent as the ancient power washed over all. I knew my awakening had shaken the entire realm. Kaelin would feel it. But before I could feel relief, Lucius's terror turned to rabid desperation. He drew a dagger. His face contorted. If you've awakened, then you must be sacrificed now. A newly awoken ancient Omega is even more potent. I'll cut you down myself and take the entire kingdom. The blade flashed in the darkness as he lunged. He knew that once my ancient blood fully settled, he would have no counter. This was his last, desperate chance. I did not flee. My wolf spirit, fully awakened, unleashed its serene yet absolute power. Unlike an alpha's fierce dominion, my strength was still, quiet, and absolute, suppressing all lesser wolf bloodlines by their very nature. Lucius staggered, his power locked, veins screaming in agony. He forced himself forward, blade still aimed at my heart. Awakening won't save you without a complete mate bond. Thena furious, black gold wolf spirit tore through the yard. The gate shattered, and Kaelin landed before me, his whole being radiating supreme alpha fury. All his restrained power finally unleashed. His strike snapped Lucius's blade like a twig. The fragments clattered to the stones. Lucius stumbled back, his face ashen. How did you break free so quickly? The council's forces, the palace guard, all were mine. Mine. Kaelin stepped toward me, shielding me behind him, his voice like winter ice. Your treason. Your conspiracy with Morgan. Your secret armies. Your plot to murder my fated Omega. I have it all in evidence. I let you rebel tonight so I could crush you and all your co-conspirators in one stroke. Behind him, I could hear the steady rhythm of his heart. All the fear, the despair, The years of hiding, they fell away. His coldness, his distance, his lonely scheming, it had all been to bring this moment. The sound of armored boots filled the courtyard as the royal guard closed in, surrounding Lucius and his remaining men. Morgan and the rebel elders were already in chains. Lucius looked around, realizing the end had come. His face contorted in ultimate despair. 10 years. Step by step. And I lost. To this ridiculous fate bond. You did not lose to fate. You lost to greed and cruelty. Kalen's voice was flat, pitiless. You are guilty of kin murder, of falsehood, of treason, of plotting the sacrifice of a fate-bound ancient Omega to throw the realm into chaos. There is no mercy for you. He signaled, and the guards took the broken Lucius away. The decade-long conspiracy was over. As the noise faded, Kalen turned to me. All the ferocity vanished from his eyes, replaced by a tenderness meant only for me. He lifted his hand, gently brushed a stray lock from my face. You have suffered so much, he said, his voice barely a whisper. No one will ever hurt you again, never, never again. I looked into his ice blue eyes, and all the pretense, all the survival, all the darkness of the past 10 years, it all dissolved. I had thought the contract was a cage. I had thought fate was a curse. But it was only a blessing, the only salvation in my darkness. Slowly, I lifted my hand and placed it over his. The cool clarity of my ancient blood met the fierce warmth of his alpha essence, and the final thread of our mate bond locked into place. A wave of power, gentle yet immense, spread through the palace, soothing the wounds of rebellion. I trust you, I whispered, no fear in my eyes, only truth and love. At the royal ceremony the next day, Kalen publicly tore up the cold political contract. The assembled nobles were stunned. Before them all, he set aside rules, alliances, political marriages, and bound himself to me in the oldest, most sacred right of the wolf people. That contract was a cage and a calculation. This bond is my heart, and my life. He stood before the throne, his voice filling the hall. Elara is my fated mate, the ancient blood who guards these lands, my one true queen. No one will ever replace her. No one will ever harm her. Those who once scorned me, schemed against me, whispered of Seraphine, all were silenced. Seraphina herself let go of her jealousy and returned to her clan in peace. The wolf nation, long troubled, finally found peace through the perfect union of the supreme Alpha and the ancient Omega. I stood beside Kalen, in the sight of all, finally free of the lies, the stigma, the disguise. I no longer had to pretend to be weak, to lie about barrenness. I stood tall and proud beside my fated mate. 10 years of hiding, one moment of destiny fulfilled. I endured the darkness with patience, and met my fate with an open heart and gained a throne of safety, a love unchanging, and years of peace.